Om. श्रीशैलाभिजनाम्बुराशिशिशिनं श्रीकृष्णतातात्मजं श्रीशैलान्वे देवनाथसुधीयप्राप्तागमान्तद्वयं पादाब्जे नरसिंहताते गुरोः न्यस्तात्मरक्षाभरं विद्वद्वृन्दचकोरचन्दिरमहं रामानुजार्यं श्रये श्रीरङ्गसुधामधुसमास्वादयन्तं श्रीरङ्गमहिषीपदपङ्कजात्मजं सुलभाश्रयं सदा मोदसिद्धमद्भुतं भजेऽहं गुरुं तं रङ्गनाथप्रियं सुखासनस्थं श्रेयाब्जपीठे चिन्मुद्रयान्वितपाणिपद्मं शुभोपवीतमिवलोकध्वपुण्ड्रं नमामि मन्तरङ्गे नमामि योगसम्राज्ञीं विजयां विजयप्रदां श्रीरङ्गाद्धासनासीनां करुणां मम मातरं गुरुरूपपरञ्ज्योतिः ज्योतिरूपगुरुः परः अज्ञानमन्दिरं ह्येतत् कुरु विज्ञानमन्दिरं मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवं यो अन्तः प्रविश्य मम वाचमिमां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयत्यखिलशक्तिधरस्वधाम्ना अन्यांश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान्नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यम् ॐ जयत्याश्रितसन्त्रास ध्वांस विध्वंसनोदयः प्रभावान् सीतया देव्या परमव्योमभास्करः सकृदेव प्रपन्नाय तवास्मीति च याचते अभयं सर्वभूतेभ्यः ददाम्येतद्व्रतं मम ज्ञानानन्दमयं देवं निर्मलस्फटिकाकृतिम् आधारं सर्वविद्यानां हयग्रीवमुपास्महे ज्ञानानन्दमयीं देवीं निर्मलस्फटिकाकृतिम् आधारं सर्वविद्यानां परां वाचमुपास्महे. Salutations to our Guru and the Guru of all Gurus. We commence our session today. What we have been seeing so far is the various aspects of Srimad Ramayanam, especially the Kalyana Gunas of Sri Ramachandra Murti. And the fact that there is a serious dialogue going on between sage Narada and sage Valmiki in a manner of Guru and Sishya. So Sri Narada Maharshi initiates Valmiki Maharshi into the great story, so to say, of Sri Ramachandra Murti. So we were looking at different aspects of Srimad Valmiki Ramayanam. It is not just a story, but it is also known as Itihasam. Itihasam means something which has happened in reality. So, well, there may be a lot of questions as to whether it did happen or not. But just to mention the continuity, in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna himself references to the fact that he was born in his previous avataram as Sri Ramachandra Murti. There is one place where he says, among all those who wield the bow and arrow, I am Lord Ramachandra. So therefore, if somebody were to even look at historical analysis, normally we look at who cited whom, in research. So Krishna himself cites the fact that there was in fact a personality called as Sri Ramachandra, and among all the people who are very powerful in wielding the bow and arrow, Krishna says, I am Ramachandra. So it is therefore a history. But beyond that, is there anything else associated with Srimad Ramayana? The question that we are asking is, what is the connection between a story, a real life story that happened several centuries or eons ago, and ourselves? We live in a world which is quite a distance apart from the so-called cultural aspects of Treta Yugam, isn't it? We may not even be able to relate to things that happened in those days. Why relate? We may not even know. ఆ కాలంలో ఏం జరిగిందని మనకి ఏం తెలియదు. ఇప్పుడు அந்த காலத்துல என்ன ஆச்சுன்னு நம்மளுக்கு இப்போ ஊகை கூட பண்ணிக்க முடியாது இல்லையா? அப்பேற்பட்ட ஒரு ஸ்திதியில இருக்கும். Therefore, why I am reinstating the foundations is the fact that unless we establish a connection between the subject and ourselves, we will not be sincere in our pursuit. So that's the reason why there is a need to relate ourselves to the story completely. So again, may I request people to go on, switch on their videos, unless you are traveling, right, or you have a connectivity issue. It's a gentle request. So in the previous session, we were looking at sloka number 97, isn't it? Dasha Varsha Sahasrani, 97 of the Balakandam, chapter 1. Dasha Varsha Sahasrani, Dasha Varsha Shatani cha Ramo Rajyamupasitva Brahmalokam Prayasyati. Lord Ramachandra, after having established himself as the supreme emperor, performing various Ashwamedha yagas and distributing varieties of wealth, pleasure, prosperity to his subjects as well as to other kingdoms for which he was the overlord. This sloka says that he ruled several hundreds of years. Why hundreds? It says thousands. Dasha Varsha Sahasrani, Dasha Varsha Shatani cha. Dasha Varsha Sahasrani means 10 into 1000 and 10 into 100. So basically what it means is that sage Narada probably got into a state where he is seeing that the rule of Lord Ramachandra is eternal, and he kind of made it a little bit poetic here, that he indeed ruled several thousands of years. One thing to note is that the number of years we live really depends on what is known as Yuga Dharma. There is Krita Yugam, Treta Yugam, Dwapara Yugam, and Kali Yugam. So with the advancements in technology, even today, we can see that in the Western world, the longevity of individuals is longer than in Eastern world, isn't it? With very rare cases where we see somebody who is 100 years old and doing a Girivalam or Giri Pradakshinam in Govardhanam or Tiruvannamalai, isn't it? We normally see that the age of individuals in the Western world is far ahead of those in the emerging world, emerging economies or developing world or underdeveloped world. And that's because of advancements in various aspects, nutritional aspects, dietary aspects, health upkeep, as well as health care. So if somebody today, the most popular area of research is cancer, isn't it? So mankind in general, we want to propagate ourselves, live as long as we want to, as long as it is physically possible. So therefore we unearth the means of extending our lifetimes. So when it is possible today, one thing we should keep in mind is that in the previous yugas, right, இப்படி இருந்திருக்கலாமோ, ఇప్పుడు ఇరిందిర్కక్కుమో ఇలా ఉంటుందో ఉండి ఉంటుందో అని we should not have a doubt that things may have existed. So we can at best say it is possible it may have existed, it is possible it may not have existed. We should not say no, it is definitely not possible for somebody to live long. No, we do not have that right to say. If you are a scientific individual, at best you should say it is possible or it may not have been possible. Okay, but what the Puranas say is that the Yuga Dharma, the fact that, let's say, you are living in a Krita Yugam. In Krita Yugam, the most fundamental differentiating aspect of the Yugam is that everybody who was living in that Yugam, they had a certain way of life. And that way of life predominantly was directed towards, leading a life which is full of dharma, artha, kama and moksham. And they were so healthy that if they were to get into a meditative state, they would remain in that state for many days and many years. And it can be scientifically proven today, if somebody were to do that research. If you get into that supreme state of happiness, then that in fact impacts your body also. So there is a connect between the spiritual experience that an individual has on the body, not only the body, but also the mind and intellect. So perhaps they would have lived longer because of the fact that they were in Krita Yugam, and it was possible even externally. The environment around had very few people who we see today in today's world. You drop the bomb whenever you feel like you want to, isn't it? So the external environment also was conducive. Everybody were, in corporate terminology, we use the word alignment. Are we aligned? Everybody draws a line of their own, and you have to basically stand in line with their vision, mission, goals, etc. So the entire society was aligned towards one goal, and that drove everything else that they were doing in their day-to-day lives. So therefore, it was possible in the Krita Yugam for people to lead a long and for happily ever after. So that type of thing was possible in the Krita Yugam. So as the Yuga Dharmam started to dilute over several centuries, right? What will happen? We will start forgetting our roots. It gets blurred. The moment it gets blurred, let's say you are taking a dip in a river. So suddenly your eyes will be full of water. And let's say you have gone for the dip along with your close family members. So once you dip and you come out, you may be holding the hand of somebody else's wife. That's quite possible. So the fact is that the moment your eyes get blurred, you will start thinking about things in a different manner, and you will think that is the reality, right? And it will all be into a situation where it is my word against your word, isn't it? And there will be a lot of unwanted logic arguments, heated arguments. So the whole purpose of life will get blurred. And that is exactly what happens. So in the Kali Yugam is the other extreme, where people have forgotten that they are not Deha Swarupam, they are actually Atma Swarupam. So they forget their true nature. They think the body is the be all and end all. Let us try to sustain this body, come what may. So if that is the case, then what happens is that the real connection with the universal essence, universal spirit is lost. Therefore, automatically the longevity will come down. So one thing to bear in mind is that when we say Dasha Varsha Sahasrani Dashavarsha Shatani cha, it is possible that they probably would have lived quite long because of the fact that everything else, even externally, there was no fertilizers in those days, everything was organic, there was no pollution, isn't it? People would have actually lived longer. So, and of course, there is also a poetic thing that comes to give that a slight exaggeration into a description. So it may be a combination of those two. Ramo Rajyam Upasitva Brahmalokam Prayasyati. That means after having ruled Ayodhyapuri and all other kingdoms for which he was the overlord, he actually ascended to his true lokam, which is Paramapadam, right? Sri Vaikuntham. That is what it means. Idam pavitram papagnam punyam vedaischa sammitam yah pathe dramacharitam sarvapapai pramuchyate. So this is indeed, sage Narada is saying, idam pavitram papagnam. This particular charitam, he says, right? Charitam means it actually depicts the life of an individual. Charanam means a way of life. And this charitram is pavitram, that which protects us from papas, papagnam. And if you were to pathet Ramacharitam, if you were to even read this Sri Ramacharitam, you acquire punyas. And what type of punyas? Punyas equivalent to Vedaischa Sammitam, that which you will acquire if you were to do Vedadhyanam. So therefore, our rishis actually created many systems. Not everybody need to take the trouble of going through the Vedas, understanding the Vedas, reciting them, reflecting on its meaning, getting into tapas and so on. The same effect you also get by doing the Parayanam of Srimad Ramayana. Sarva papaihi pramuchyate. So there are many different types of sins. So if you were to refer to the so-called Garuda Puranam, you will see that there are many different types of sins we commit and different types of atonement for those sins. They are all detailed there. So all types of papas will be washed away if we were to do Parayanam of Srimad Ramayana. So that is the phalan of doing Srimad Ramayana Parayana. Etad akyanam ayushyam patate Ramayanam naraha saputra pautraha saganaha pretya swarge mahiyate. Etad Ramayanam akyanam ayushyam patan nama Ramayanam naraha. What this means is, if somebody were to really look at the true meaning of Srimad Ramayanam, okay, it not only enhances your longevity, that's what it says, ayushyam. So you become a person endowed with a longer life. Therefore, you can be emboldened to do many more quarrels during your lifetime. No, you can lead a more fulfilling life. And then saputra pautra saganaha pretya swarge mahiyate. So you will be endowed with what this says is putraha pautraha. You may think that this is again a sexist way of saying you will get only sons and grandsons, isn't it? But you may treat this as the fact that you will get progeny and their progeny, okay, in such a manner that your needs will be addressed not only in this world. If you get children and grandchildren, won't we all be happy, isn't it? So every grandfather on call here, so you will all really, the moment we talk of your grandchild, you will get a smile in your face, isn't it? That happens automatically. And the fact is that this is embedded in our genes and persona. The seed wants to propagate itself, right? So it becomes a sapling, then a plant, then finally into a fruit. And embedded in the fruit is the seed. So it will be very happy. The seed will be very happy only when it sees itself again in its own form. There is a statement in the Vedas, Atma vai putra namasi. Oh son, you can think of daughter, it doesn't matter. You are nothing but myself. Okay. So the son or daughter is nothing but a replica of yourself. That is how the Vedas say. So that means the seed propagates itself. Saputra pautra saganaha pretya swarge mahiyate. Pretya அப்படின்னாக்கா இந்த லோகத்தை விட்டுட்டு இன்னொரு இடம் போறச்சே. That is, you drop this body, the shell of the body. ఈ దేహమున వదిలి ఇంకొక జన్మం అనేది వస్తుందా లేదా అని తెలీదు. కానీ స్వర్గే మహీయతే, రామాయణం చదివితే మీకు స్వర్గం తప్పకుండా దొరుకుతుంది. The moment you leave this body, and if you have done Parayanam of Srimad Ramayanam, then you will not only attain Swarga, but the lords there, who are the lords in Swarga? They are Indra, Agni, Mitra, Varuna, and Vayu, and so on, isn't it? The gods there will worship you. Mahiyate means they will themselves worship you. That means you would have acquired so much punyam that even the gods there will worship you. So such is the power of even Patan, even reading Srimad Ramayana. But we are very soon going to see what Valmiki did. If you were to go into that state, you can imagine what can happen. Okay. Patan Vijaha Vag Vrishabhatvamiyate Syak Kshatriyo Bhumipatitvamiyate Vanikjanaha Panyapalatvamiyate Janascha Shudro Pimahatvamiyate. So sage Narada, now he summarizes what will happen to each of the different varnas here. Okay. Patan Dvijaha. Okay. So there was a question. I didn't see I just saw the chat window. Do we assume during Rama period 1 year is 360 days? Yeah. So of course, the duration of the year also is probably something that changes. There are deeper definitions of the unit of time. Okay. The unit of time, if you were to look at it, right, is associated with your breath. Dirghayusman bhava abdinaka, ayus dirghamarkam. What is ayus? Ayus is nothing but prana. So one who is able to breathe deeply is in general correlated with the ability to live longer. And a second, actually, strictly speaking, 1 second for me is very different from 1 second for you. So it is correlated with how deeply we breathe. So therefore, the definition of Varsham actually becomes very subjective. Okay, we will not go into those details now, but in general, we can keep that. I think Dr. Ravi had raised that issue. So in this shloka, Patan Dvijaha Vag Vrishabhatvamiyate. So the Dvijaha, who is a Dvija? A Dvija is nothing but somebody who is born twice. Dvijaha. And they are basically those who have taken initiation into Gayatri Mantram, Gayatri Upasana, and thereon studying the Vedas, understanding their meanings, and leading a life based on Vedic rituals. Right? So if I were to say, do we have any person who is doing this today? And in it, we can only count in our fingertips those who lead such a life. So if we don't lead such a life, we should not claim that we are all Dvijas. Okay. So you will see that if I describe the true nature of the Varnas and Jatis, unfortunately, none of us qualify for even the 4 true Varnas that were described in the Shastras. Okay. There was a discussion in the last class, isn't it? There is a difference between Varnas and Jatis. Right? Jati is something that you get because you are born. You are born into a certain body. Whereas our Vedas say we are all Atma Swarupam, isn't it? Everybody is of the nature of divinity, of the nature of Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. That is our true nature. But the moment we get embodied, the soul gets embodied, meaning it acquires a body, the reason why it takes that body is primarily because of its gunas. There are certain gunas associated with the jiva. Sattvam, Rajas and Tamas. Those are the 3 gunas. Depending on the balance of these 3 gunas, okay, how much of sattva do you have, how much of Rajas do you have, and how much of Tamas you have, that determines what body will you take. Okay. So we have dwelt this in great detail in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, but for those of you who are not part of those discussions, so the aspect of Varnam is basically how much of these 3 gunas get tainted on your Jivatma. And that kind of ensures that you take birth from one form to the other. So Sanatana Dharma says that you may be born as a squirrel in this Janma. In your next Janma, perhaps you are born as a Kshatriya. Then later on as a Vaishya, then as a Brahmana, then again as a Shudra. So there are a lot of references where it is not necessary that if you are born into one particular jati, you actually attain moksha. So the aspect of moksham is a tight contract between the jiva and the Paramatman. And it's only when the jiva violates that contract, the Paramatman never violates. He is a very smart person. So he has strong legal advisors that on his side, everything is properly written up. It is only the jiva who keeps violating that contract. And that violation happens by our own attachment to these 3 gunas. The more of tamas we try to stick with, that starts coloring our jiva. And that is what actually gives your varna. Varnam is nothing but color. And that color manifests itself in the form of a jati. Jati means ja means you are born. So you are born into a particular body, right? So that is what gives you a particular jati. So there is a difference between varna and jati. That's what my guru used to say, that you may be a kshatriya in your jati, but internally you may be a vaishya. Or you are born as a brahmana in jati, but internally you are a shudra. You are born as a shudra, but internally you are a brahmana, right? So these multiple combinations are quite possible. Unfortunately, we have lost track of that particular science. And the fact that is illustrated here, patan dvijaha vag vrishabhatva. So if a true dvija, as per what are the original qualities, if that person studies Srimad Ramayanam, he will attain what is known as vag vrishabhatvam. He will become the bull among men in terms of his speech. That means the various aspects, various branches of learning that we have seen, all of that will become Karlo Dunya Mutti Me Abdin Uttar Sonar, or Perior. Madri, Vag Rishabhatam, everything will be in your palms. Syat Kshatriyo Bhumi Patittvamiyate. Kshatriya, if he were to do Ramayana Patanam, Bhumi patitvam iyat. He will become the pati of Bhumi. Pati means pati iti patihi. One who protects is known as pati. So in this case, he is somebody who protects the various lands that he conquers, various kingdoms that he conquers. Vanikjanaha panya phalatvam. One who is engaged in vanijyam, that is commerce, isn't it? So he will be enriched with different types of fruits. Panya phalatvam. So dhana dhanyam samriddhi ellame irukum. Janascha shudro pi mahatvam. If you are a shudra, then you will attain what is known as mahatvam, which is greatness. So in Sanatana Dharmam, this division is primarily because of guna on the one hand, and the other is karma. What has become diluted is the fact that we think somebody has to do that job. It is your duty, you have to do it. No. The original basis for all this is because of the gunas inherent in you, nature itself makes it possible for you to do that activity. Okay, so that is how the original system was born. So the ability of the individual is encoded in the gunas, and they actually, so if you were to, somebody is very, very active and aggressive, you make that person to sit calmly for 10 minutes. Forget it, even for 2 minutes, the person will not be able to sit. All of us are in that state today, I believe, isn't it? So it is very, very difficult for somebody who is extremely withdrawn. You want to make that person into an active state, not possible. How much ever you try, try 21 days, it will become a habit. It will not change for some individual. That is because of swabhavam that comes from the three gunas. Okay. So like Kumbhakarna, somebody wants to keep sleeping 24 hours. You want to make them active. It will become next to impossible. However, what rishis have so kindly given to us is the fact, of course, if you were to look at the genealogy of rishis, there have been rishis in Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. Nothing stops from you becoming a rishi. So my guru used to say, just like Swaraj is the birthright of every individual, that's what Tilak told. Atma Sakshatkaram is the birthright of every jiva. Okay, there is no bar for that. So therefore, there have been rishis. In fact, the greatest rishi that we venerate so much is Veda Vyasa. We don't want to dig into who he was as a jati, isn't it? So there is no connection, so to say. That's the difference between Varna and Jati. Unfortunately, we have taken it to such an extent that we want to dictate others. That the moment you want to dictate and see things, it's a matter of your ahankaram. It is your ego. You are not sticking to what the science actually suggests or says. So that's what sage Narada concludes in this sloka number 100. Okay. So, but that concludes the Balakanda, first chapter. The immediate thing that we need to observe here is that as a guru, Narada has told Valmiki that, okay, here is Srimad Ramayana. This is what actually happened. We should bear in mind that both Valmiki and Sri Ramachandra were Samakalinas. They were in the same time horizon. Okay. So the moment somebody tells you, hey, somebody like Kapil Dev, he took so many wickets, he made so many runs. By the way, he lives in Patiala. Abdina, what is the next immediate thing? We'll go and book a ticket in Indigo. I'll go rush myself and see where is Kapil Dev living today. I want to see him in flesh and blood. Idantha cheppare anta nijamena நீங்க நிஜமாவே இத்தனை செஞ்சுரிஸ் பண்ணுங்களா அப்படின்னு போய் நம்ம என்கொயரி பண்றதுக்கு மனசு தூண்டும் இல்லையா? So if that was the case, what would sage Valmiki have done? He would have said, oh Narada, thank you so much, I bow to you, here is my subscription fees, monthly 1,000 rupees per month or 10 pounds per month, lifelong subscription. I have done an auto debit. You are my guru. And now allow me, I'll fly towards Ayodhya. I'll go and see who Rama is. So if you are a very inquisitive person, what you will do? ఒకళ్ళ గురించి తెలుసుకోవాలంటే మనం ఏం చేస్తాం? వాళ్ళ ఊరికి వెళ్తాం. వాళ్ళ ఊరికి వెళ్ళి அக்க அக்கப்பக்கம் ఉండే వాళ్ళందరిని அழுகுతాம். ஒரு ஊருக்கு போயிட்டு ஒருத்தர் ஒரு ஊர்ல இருக்காருனாக்கா அவரை பத்தி தெரிஞ்சுக்கிறதுக்கு நம்ம என்ன பண்ணுவோம்? அந்த ஊர்ல இருக்கிற ஜனங்களை போய் கேட்போம் இல்லையா? தட் இஸ் தி ஹியூமன் டெண்டன்சி. We want to basically get into the world of gossip. Oh, Rama did like this. Rama also did like this. Rama need not have done this. Why did Rama do like? So all types of things you will acquire. So Narada has already told so many things. So because Valmiki is a rishi, he has the ability to do all of this, right? But on the contrary, you will see what he did in this particular chapter, which is the third chapter in Balakandam. I'll take only the first 4 or 5 of this just to illustrate what is the difference between a true seeker of knowledge and a seeker of arrogance and ahankara. That is something we should bear in mind. So when we are all going through Srimad Ramayanam, one thing is to, okay, I want to listen to this because one day I will become a grandfather or a grandmother. I will have nice stories to narrate, isn't it? So and so told me this story. Valmiki also said this. So this is their version. This is my version. This is somebody else. So we can add all kinds of things and make the story very, very interesting for our grandchildren, isn't it? Or if you go a step further, okay, probably there is something in it because, Raghavan is saying that there is something. వాళ్ళు ఏదో చెప్తున్నారు, ఉంటుంది ఉండకుండా కూడా ఉంటుంది, మనకు తెలీదు, ట్రై చేస్తాం అనేసి you go to that next level of details thinking, okay, let me dive deeper, right? But the deepest aspect, Shrutva Vastu Samagram Tat Dharmatma Dharma Samhitam Vyaktamanveshate Bhuyo Yadruttam Tasya Dhimataha. Shrutva Vastu Samagram. After having listened to sage Valmiki, Samagram, everything, okay, everything means from start to end. Tat Dharmatma Dharma Samhitam. So Dharmatma here is basically Valmiki himself. He is a Dharmatma. That is the first thing to note, right? He is endowed with a lot of Dharma. And he also listened to the story which is Dharma Samhitam. See, we can learn Srimad Ramayanam from the greatest of all acharyas today. Who is that? It is Google Acharya, isn't it? You go to Google, you will get 225 different hyperlinks. You click on them, you will get 100 more links, isn't it? So therefore, it is possible to understand or rather misunderstand Srimad Ramayanam from many, many different perspectives. What we should endeavor to do is to learn Srimad Ramayanam as it is, Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is in Ramadri, as it is. Who is that person who is qualified to talk about Srimad Ramayanam? Did we ever think about this before venturing into studying Srimad Ramayanam? Probably some of us would have, isn't it? But this is the notam or the lens that we need to have. Dharma Samhitam. It was none other than sage Narada who actually spoke about Srimad Ramayanam. Therefore, Narada himself is a rishi. The moment anything comes out of his mouth, rishis are not like us, they did not go to any course of public speaking. Whatever they speak, they would not only have thought, okay, they would have experienced it. That is the difference. Rishis speak from their experience. Now, the moment you bridge your words with your inner experience, the effect will be completely different. Right? So we have actually listened to certain anecdotes in Kulasekara Alvar's life. There was apparently one person who was giving a lecture, Upanyasam on Srimad Ramayanam. Towards the end of it, Kulasekara Alvar, he became so empowered with that particular spirit that he stood up. Mana Sainyam ekkadundi? Let us go and fight for Srimad Ramachandra. நாம் போய் சண்டை போடணும் அப்படின்னு அவர் ஏந்து நின்றுட்டார். அப்போ this is what everybody says, you actually praise Kulasekara Alvar, definitely yes, but what we need to do is to praise the person who imparted it. அந்த ஒரு தர்மம் வரத்துக்கு காரணபூதமா இருந்த ஒருத்தர் இருந்திருக்கார். There is somebody who has actually sown the real seed of dharma. That person, we probably don't know his name. Probably some of us know his name. But he also needs to be, he is venerated, right? So Dharma Samhitam, so Srimad Ramayanam is imparted to Valmiki along with the sweet of Dharma. Vyaktamanveshate bhuyo yadvrittam tasya dhimataha. Therefore, Vyaktam means whatever Sri Narada Maharshi spoke so far is through words, isn't it? Walk. And that walk, just now we saw that if a Rishi speaks a particular walk, the walk will have a power on us. It will show its power on us. Right? அது அதனுடைய வேலையை செய்யும். நம்ம பேசுறதுக்கும் ஒரு ரிஷி பேசுறதுக்கும் వాక్కుల మాత్రం వ్యత్యాసం இல்லை. వాళ్ళు మాట్లాడే మాటల్లో మాత్రం వ్యత్యాసం లేదు. ఆ మాటల నుంచి మనకి ఏర్పడే ఒక ట్రాన్స్ఫర్మేషన్ ఉంటుంది చూడండి, దట్ ఈస్ ఆల్సో డిఫరెంట్. அவ பேசறச்சே நம்மள என்ன பலத்தை கொடுக்கிறது, அதுவும் டிஃபரெண்ட். இது என்ன தூண்டுறதுன்னு பாருங்க. இங்க வியக்தம் அன்வேஷதே பூயஹ, தி வேர்ட்ஸ் ஆஃப் சேஜ் Narada actually goaded Valmiki to get into a state of Anveshanam. Anveshanam means exploration, discovery. Unfortunately, Sundar Pichai was not there in those days. So he could not actually, in fact, computers were not there. So he could not have explored Srimad Ramayanam any which other way than physically going. But what did he do? Yadvrittam tasya dhimataha. Dhimataha அப்படின்னா எத்விருத்தம்னாக்கா ராமருடைய சரித்தம், விருத்தம்னா சரித்தம். Dhimataha of the intellectual, basically of Sri Ramachandra. How did he start his Anveshanam? That is what is quite inquisitive. I'll just initiate that in this class and we'll discuss the details in this class. Upasprishhodakam samyake munisthitva kritanjalihi prachinagreshu dharbeshu dharmenanveshate gatim. So says Valmiki, he is also a rishi, isn't it? So the first thing that he does, okay, Narada has instructed me on the great Dhiman, Sri Ramachandra, and his words have now made me to discover the real truth. What did he do? Upasprishhodakam samyake. He touched the holy waters properly. And the meaning of this is he actually did Achaman. We do Achyutaya Namaha, Anantaya Namaha, Govindaya Namaha, isn't it? So he did Achamanam. Munihi. So he is actually a Muni. Maunat Munirichyate. One who is able to perform Maunavradam. All the spouses here will vouch for it, isn't it? Many of us go on Maunavradam. It's very easy for us. But here, Maunam is not just external, also internal. Kritanjalihi. So he did the Namaskara Mudra. He brought his two palms together into a state of devotion, as well as Om Namastu Aikyam Prachakshate. The fact that he wanted to link himself with the divine being. So this denotes unison, right? And that is the mode in which he got into. Prachinagreshu dharbeshu dharmenanveshate gatim. So he ensured that he sat on darbha grass, and darbha grass because he was a poor man, isn't it? he didn't have access to Hamsatulika Talpam, as they say, duck feather, you call that as duck feather pillows and couches and so on. Here, he sat on Prachi Nagareshu Darbeshu. It's not because he was poor, but Darbha grass has a specific pavityam associated with it. Okay, details on that later on. But he sat on a mat made of Darbha grass, and then he started to discover this Gati. Gati means what exactly is the thing that sage Narada told me. What is the Charitram of Sri Ramachandra? And how did he try to discover it? Dharmena anveshate gatim. He tried to get into that state of dharma, which alone can give us access to that gati. Right? So that is the spirit with which sage Valmiki started his discovery. So the fact here is that once a guru initiates us into some vidya, mostly what we do, we first of all forget the guru on the second day. Third day, we forget what the guru told us, right? And fourth, we substantiate it with so many Shastra Vakyam, saying it is enough. We have done that once. That is more than enough for us, right? But Valmiki was not like that. What did he do? He actually wanted to rediscover what sage Narada had told him. And how? In the most proper manner, dharmena. So that is the spirit with which we hopefully will rediscover Srimad Ramayana. Because if whatever recipes we see on YouTube, isn't it? Whatever the party recipe or chitti recipe or mami recipe we see, they seem to so easily do Mysore Pak or Chakra Pongal. The same thing we replicate with all ingredients, with the same ovens, etc. It would have become something, it will go back to its original form, which is carbon, isn't it? So, Mula Swarupathila kondu poi nirthiruvom. So that is our, the fact that we color ourselves so much into what we do, we forget the true color of the Lord. If we were to associate with that color, right, then the recipe that is shown on YouTube will match with what you are doing, right? So hopefully we will all get into that state as we go through this journey. So with those words, we'll conclude our session here today. Guru Charana
Nirbhara Bhakta Guru Charana Muja Nirbhara Bhakta Samsara Dachira Mukta Guru Charana Muja Krishna Krishna Sendriya Manasa Niyamadevam Rakshasi Nija Hridayastham Devam Bhaja Govindam Bhaja Govindam Govindam Bhaja Mudamate
Kayena vacha manasa indriyairva buddhya atmana va prakrite swabhavate karomi yadhyat sakalam parasmai Shriman Narayanayeti samarpayami. Sarvam Shri Ramachandraarpanamastu. Have a nice day and a great week ahead. Thank you so much. Stop there.
Ram.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raghavanji.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.